Hello everyone, and welcome to the second webinar of Cryptography, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward and I'm IT Masters short course MC. Your mentor, as you hopefully know by now, is Matt Constable, the inventor of the Caesar shift. Before we begin, the usual housekeeping. First, a correction. Last week I said all webinars will be at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And that is wrong because apparently it is already October somehow, which is terrifying. However, next week we'll enter daylight savings on the East Coast, which is where we're broadcasting from. So please check your local guides and keep an eye out for the reminder emails, lest you get a little bit narky and send Hannah millions of emails as a group. Thank you. Also, we encourage questions and the use of chat during the webinar. And we use two methods in our webinars. We ask that you direct all questions relevant to course content to the Q&A section, and you send all administration type questions, dates, times, resource availability, for example, to the support team in chat. We'll also accept today your best daylight savings funnies about curtains or cows. And to make sure everyone gets the joke, please set your chat to send to everyone. We'll have Q&A sessions throughout the webinar, I guess, at the end of every topic if it comes up, or if a question is particularly relevant, I'll interrupt Matt and I'll briefly talk about studying with IT Masters and CSU, as I am contractually obliged to do, and as hopefully many of you are interested in. I'll do that after Matt's presentation, but before the long-winded Q&A, so that you can sort of make your choice as to whether you want to hang around then. Hannah's here too in the usual role. Thank you, Hannah, looking after us here and looking after the course page, learn.itmasters.edu.au, which is where you'll find all of the other materials for this course, links to readings, quizzes, and the forums, which hopefully you've been having a fun time with. I hope you're having a good time there. I haven't checked. If anyone has been checking that out, let me know if it's going well in the chat. That's enough out of me for now. Please welcome Matt. How are you? How was your week? What tales? Matt's tales.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Guy, and welcome everyone, including Guy and Hannah, to our second week. Not really much to tell this week. We were talking off air a little while ago about some rodents that I've caught around the house the last 7 days, and that's probably a sad reflection of how unexciting my week has been up to this stage. So it's certainly good to be here this evening to talk to you about what hopefully is an engaging topic for you all. So this evening, we're looking at symmetric encryption, which is the next part of our four-part series. So we've got symmetric encryption tonight, asymmetric encryption next week, which is quite exciting, and then we finish off with hashing techniques in our final week. This week is important because this is the oldest form of encryption, or ciphering, if you like, and we're going to look at a couple of different things that hopefully will pique your interest. And there's some really good hands-on activities that will be available on the short course Moodle site pretty much from about now. But hopefully I will keep your attention and you'll have a look at those once we've finished here. So the agenda for this evening is some basic definitions around classic encryption or standard encryption. We're going to look at, in a very small way, some possible ways in which encryption can be attacked. This type of encryption can be attacked, and we'll build on that next week as well with over the next couple of weeks with asymmetric encryption and hashing as well. We'll also look at some example ciphers from the categories Substitution Ciphers and Transposition Ciphers, and we'll actually work through some encryption examples to give you an actual view on how these ciphers actually work, which will then hopefully give you a little bit of background knowledge to be able to then do the hands-on activities, which all involve some encrypting or decrypting of ciphertext, which is quite interesting. And then right at the end, in the last few slides, we're going to have a very small look at two of the more common symmetric encryption algorithms that have been used over the last 20-odd years. So DES, which is Data Encryption Standard, and AES, which is Advanced Encryption Standard. AES is pretty much the most popular symmetric encryption cipher used at the moment. And we'll talk about how both of those work as we get towards the last few slides. So in starting with classic encryption, we need to have an understanding of some basic definitions for a start in order for us to progress through, have a look at our examples and get the most out of it. So our plain text, if we have a look at that first definition here, plain text is simply the cryptography word for the original message. So the unencrypted plain text message that you want to send. Now, it could be an email, it could be a notepad document, it could be a string of numbers, it could be a Word document, it could be an Excel spreadsheet, it could be a operating system image, it could be anything, doesn't matter. It's just whatever the original form of the data or image you're trying to send occurs in. The ciphertext then refers to that same message after it's been encrypted. Okay, so in the garbled form, and that's what we send across over the transmission wires to our recipient at the other end, and this ciphertext is protected by the encryption so that no one other than the intended recipient can theoretically look at it. Enciphering or encryption is the process of turning the plain text into the ciphertext. Deciphering or decryption is the reverse, so turning the ciphertext into the plain text. And keep in mind that these terms, enciphering and encryption, and deciphering and decryption, are used interchangeably throughout the next couple of weeks. So, you know, don't get them mixed up. If I say enciphering instead of encryption, it means the same thing. Cryptography is simply the area of study of the schemes, mechanisms, and tools that are used for encryption. Okay, so that's the whole holistic picture. Cryptographic system or /cipher is a scheme, a mechanism, or an algorithm, typically a mathematical algorithm, that is used to convert plain text into ciphertext. Cryptanalysis is the opposite, really. It's using techniques and knowledge around those techniques used to decipher or trying to decipher a message without having any knowledge of the algorithm or the keys that were used to do the original encryption in the first place. So that's sort of where your crypto cracking sort of tools and activities live. And then cryptology is the combined areas of cryptography and cryptanalysis together. Okay, so some different terms, all got that crypt part in it, which is why it sometimes makes it a little bit confusing, but there are basic definitions that we're going to work with moving forward over the next few weeks. So, symmetric encryption. The main crux of symmetric encryption is that it uses the same key for encrypting plain text into ciphertext and for decrypting ciphertext into plain text. One single key. And it's really, really important that we keep the secrecy of that key maintained, and we'll see why very, very shortly. Symmetric encryption can also be known and described and mentioned as classical, conventional, or single key encryption. So anytime you see any of those terms, they're referring to symmetric encryption. It's the oldest type of encryption, and it was the only type of encryption available until the 70s when the gentleman who invented the RSA asymmetric encryption algorithm came along. And we'll talk about that in a lot more detail next week. Symmetric encryption algorithms are still the most widely used because they're nice and simple and they're fast. So, what does symmetric encryption look like? Looks a lot like this. So don't worry too much about the formulas written here. We will break those down in a little more detail shortly. I am mindful that I don't want to go too deeply into the mathematics around this because cryptography, as you can imagine, is very mathematically intensive. I'm certainly not a maths graduate of any sort, but I understand a lot of the maths around this, but I'm not expecting anyone out there to be experts on maths, so I will give you all the math knowledge you need as we go along. Symmetric encryption takes a plain text and it feeds it into an encryption algorithm, for example, AES or DES or triple DES or blowfish or twofish all examples of symmetric encryption algorithms. And in combination with that plain text going into that encryption algorithm, it also uses a secret key which is shared between the sender on this side and the recipient on this side. That algorithm then spits out or converts that plain text into a ciphertext, which is what we transmit or put onto some medium in order to be transmitted. So whether we put it on a CD or a disk or a USB key or something and then carry it or send it by courier, or we transmit it over some sort of internet type connection or network connection. When it gets to the recipient end, they simply pass it back through the same algorithm, but with the reverse option set so that it basically decrypts. So it goes in to the same algorithm, uses the same algorithm and the same shared secret key to decrypt and turn back into the plain text output. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty simple model. We've got plain text into an algorithm with a key, ciphertext into an algorithm and a key, decrypts into plain text. So very, very simple model. The key points about it are, like the pun there, the key points are that we must maintain total secrecy of the encryption key because it's used for both encryption and decryption, and we have to share it. A big issue arises with how we share that key secretly. So how we maintain the secrecy of that key while it's being transmitted, okay, either digitally or by some other form. And that's a really big part of what we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks, is keeping that encryption key really secret. Because if that encryption key is not secret, then and a hacker has the key and they grab the ciphertext, it is then really, really easy for them to decrypt and find the plain text. There's not that many symmetric encryption algorithms around that they would have to look too hard to find the correct algorithm and then use it to decrypt our secret message. So the secrecy of the key is absolutely important. If we look at it from a simple, this is looking at it from an overall perspective of a cryptology type system. Again, we have our message source and our encryption algorithm, our key. We have this secure channel, which really just represents the ciphertext going through a decryption algorithm and then out to the destination. Where cryptanalysis exists, so that's if you like, hacking or trying to crack some form of encryption without understanding, having any access to the key or the algorithm itself, that exists in this spot here. And we've got a couple of pieces of data here, some numbers, which we will delve into in more detail shortly, some very large numbers that we can potentially crack. But the point is these numbers are so large and they're so difficult to what they call factorize, then it becomes very unlikely that our encryption is going to be broken anytime soon. And we'll have a look at an example of that very shortly. To characterize our some different terms, I guess, in terms of what we're going to be looking at over the next 45 minutes or so, and then into next week. There are two types of operations with respect to symmetric encryption algorithms. So there is a group called the Substitution Ciphers, which basically substitute a particular letter or character in the plain text with another character or letter from a different cipher, from a cipher. So it just substitutes it straight out. Transposition ciphers work slightly differently in that instead of substituting them with a different alphabet, with a character from a different alphabet, they will actually transpose the order of the characters around to basically scramble them that way. And we're going to have a look at examples of both of those types of operations. We also have, as I said, symmetric and asymmetric encryption algorithms. We're looking at symmetric this week, has a single key. Asymmetric encryption algorithms have two keys, a private and a public key. Again, we will look at that next week. And then in terms of how we process our plain text, so how we convert our plain text into ciphertext, we can do that in two ways. We can do it as in a block of text. so a certain number of bits or certain number of bytes, or we can do it just as a stream of characters or digits. And both of these are used in the different algorithms. The algorithms we're going to be looking at are block ciphers, but stream ciphers also exist as well. In terms of cryptanalysis and brute force attacks, so cryptanalysis being that ability to crack encryption without having an understanding of the key or the algorithm, or brute force is really just trying as many different algorithms and combination of keys as we possibly can in order to try and find the eventual combination that allows us to crack the encryption. In a cryptanalysis attack, so that is where we're trying to intelligently work out what algorithm is being used and what the keys are, it does rely on the fact that we have to have, it relies on the nature of the algorithm, so what type of algorithm it is, whether it's symmetric, asymmetric, block or stream. Plus we have to have some knowledge of the general characteristics of the plain text. And we'll see that as we go through some of the examples of the ciphers shortly. Some of them don't actually hide the patterns of letters, so the letter frequency that exists in normal English language. So it doesn't hide the patterns of a normal language. And so those types of algorithms are a little easier to crack, if you like, if you're thinking about it from a letter frequency point of view. But we need some sort of general characteristic. We have to have an understanding of some of the general characteristics of the plain text. So what could the possible message be that we're trying to break? A really good example of this was what Alan Turing and his team did during the war when they broke the Enigma code. So the Enigma machine was a machine that the Germans had, which they would encrypt messages with and send them across the radio waves, and the British were intercepting them and trying to work out what they meant. Now, they had no idea of what was in the actual message. But eventually, after much trial and error and building a machine that was having a lot of difficulty breaking the encryption, they finally realized that every single one of the messages that the Germans sent always finished with the two words Heil Hitler. And because they knew that was a really important piece of the knowledge of the general characteristics of the plain text. So they knew that they always had to look for Heil Hitler. And once they knew that, given the number of letters in that, so what's that? That's 10 letters, that they knew would always be the last 10 letters of the message. Once they programmed that into their machine, which he actually called Christopher, named after a childhood friend of his, once they knew that, the Christopher was able to break the Enigma machine coding very, very quickly. So you need that general characteristic, that knowledge of that, whatever the general characteristic is of plain text. If you don't have that, it's really, really difficult. It also exploits the characteristics of the algorithm in attempting to deduce a specific plain text or to deduce the key being used. So we understand that we're using a block cipher or a symmetric cipher, or so a symmetric block cipher or a symmetric stream cipher, and we have that understanding. If we have both of those pieces of knowledge, then we're in a really good place to try and crack the encryption that we're looking at. A brute force attack, on the other hand, just is trying to use every possible key on a piece of cybertext until you come up with a piece of plain text that you can actually read and make sense of. That's a real hard labor version of doing it. And on average, you have to try half of all the possible keys in order to achieve success. So, and this is where the bit size, so how many bits you're using for a key or how big the numbers are you're using to generate a key becomes really important. The bigger the numbers are, the more difficult it is to crack and the more combinations you need to try. Types of attacks on encrypted messages. So there's a number of different sort of attacks which are theoretically possible. We might try to attack the ciphertext only, for example. We have to have some knowledge of the encryption algorithm and the ciphertext, as I said. We can attack the known plain text. So in other words, we've got a known plain text that we know has been encrypted by a particular cipher. And so now we're trying to find out what the algorithm and the cipher are in order to be able to decrypt more plain text as it comes along. So we need to have knowledge of the encryption algorithm, we need some ciphertext on which to practice, and we need one or more plain text ciphertext pairs formed with the secret key. So we need a lot of information. So this one, you need a lot of information to actually try that attack. We can do similar with the chosen plain text. Again, we still need a lot of information. We need the algorithm, the ciphertext, and some key information. With a chosen ciphertext attack, again, we need lots of information. With a chosen text attack, we need encryption algorithm, ciphertext, plain text, keys, information, ciphertext, keys, and information. So the more sophisticated the more sophisticated these attacks become as we progress down this first column, the more information we need and the more difficult it is to obtain that information, the more unlikely it is that we're going to have that information in order to be able to decrypt our messages. So what we're really trying to say here is cryptanalysis is really hard, particularly when you're talking about sophisticated algorithms like AES or RSA, which is asymmetric, RSA 2048. Okay, once you start talking about algorithms like that, cryptanalysis is very, very difficult. When we have a look at the example ciphers shortly, you'll see that's really easy, but they're really simple ciphers with small numbers. So encryption scheme security is provided because of this thing that we call computational or conditional security. If something is unconditionally secure, basically this means that no matter how much time an opponent or an attacker has, it is practically impossible to decrypt the ciphertext because they don't have the required information that they need. So they don't have information around the algorithm, they don't have information around the plain text, they don't have information around the ciphertext, or they don't have any information about the keys. So, but there's some piece of the information that is critical for the decryption to work that they don't have access to. And so it makes it very difficult for them to then decrypt the ciphertext. The less information they have, the longer it's going to potentially take, the more secure your algorithm is with respect to time. The concept of computational security, or being computationally secure, is that the cost, in other words, the time really, that it would take to break an encryption algorithm or a cipher exceeds the time for which the information is going to be valuable to you. So if I'm an attacker and I intercept some ciphertext and it's going to take me 5 weeks to decrypt it, it might not be worth my effort if the information's only valuable for a couple of hours. And that's what that idea of computationally secure means, that the effort that you'd have to put into breaking the cipher far exceeds the benefits you get if you get the plain text information from it. So it's just not worth the effort. In a brute force attack, as I said before, an attacker will try to use every possible key until they can find some some plain text that they can understand. On average, it takes half of all the possible keys to achieve, as I said, but it also requires some knowledge of the context of the contents of the plain text, and some means for automatically distinguishing the plain text from the gibberish that the encryption results in. Now, substitution techniques. Okay, so now we're starting to look at the actual algorithms, and we'll look at some examples here. So in the substitution technique, as I said, the letters of the plain text are easily replaced by other letters, numbers, or symbols from a different alphabet. Okay, so it could be just simply the same standard Arabic alphabet, but it could be with rotated characters. It could be from the Greek alphabet. It could be from the Latin alphabet. It could be from any alphabet you want. It could be from using wingding symbols or hieroglyphics, or it could just be using numbers. If the plain text, so PT is plain text, CT is ciphertext. If the plain text is viewed as a sequence of bits, so if we break our letters and convert them into ASCII character, so ASCII binary, then the substitution involves replacing the plain text bits with the ciphertext bits. So we take our characters, take our letters, that we've written down. We convert them into ones and zeros into a string of binary digits, and we then replace each of those bits of the plain text with a different bit from the other alphabet, which then will turn it into the ciphertext. Some example ciphers, some we're going to look at. So we'll look at the Caesar cipher, pretty straightforward one that's been around since the days of Caesar, obviously. The monoalphabetic ciphers, when I think we look at the Playfair cipher. And then there's also polyalphabetic ciphers. So monoalphabetic means they use one alphabet or the same alphabet to do the encryption. Polyalphabetic ciphers mean they use a different one or multiple alphabets in which to do the encryption. And in the particular cipher we look at, there is a Vignere cipher. But there is also others as well. Okay, so the Caesar cipher. This is the simplest and earliest known use of a substitution cipher, which was used by, surprise, surprise, Julius Caesar. In a standard Caesar cipher, we replace each letter of the plain text with the letter of the alphabet that is 3 places further down. Okay, so we still use the same alphabet, but we just use the letter that is 3 places down. So example, if we have the letter A, we're going to transpose that with the letter that's 3 places down, so in position 4, which is the letter D. Okay. Now, great question is, what happens when you get to Z? What's 3 letters down, or X, Y, or Z? What are 3 letters down from them? Well, it wraps round to the other end. So Z becomes C, Y becomes B, X becomes A. So if we consider the plain text down the bottom here, okay, meet me after the toga party. If we use a Caesar cipher using a 3-letter shift, this is the ciphertext we result in. Okay, so as I said before, as an example, I said A turns into D. Now, the interesting thing about this is that you'll see that if we space out the letters the same as the plain text, then you can see that it doesn't change the overall properties or characteristics of the plain text. So, for example, we could see here there's a double H there, there's a double E, there's an H there for the E, there's an H there for the E, there's an H there for the E. So we might be able to guess that, I mean, typically in a 2-letter word, the second letter is a vowel. Okay, and there's not very often you will see A or I or O or U. So chances are it's probably an E. And if you know that, you can then say, all right, well, H is E. So then based on that, where does that line up? So E, F, G, H. H is 3 letters after E. Bingo, we've got our shift already. So we know that H is 3 letters after E. Let's just see what happens. So what's 3 letters after M? It's P. Okay, PH is me. So now we know how to break this. We know how to break the Caesar cipher really, really simply. Okay, so that's a really simple example of how easy that can potentially be to break in its standard form. Now, of course, with a Caesar cipher, we can use more than a 3-count shift. The normal Caesar cipher involves shifting the letters 3 down, but we don't have to use that. We can use any number we like. We can even use a 44 shift if we like. So if, for example, let's keep it simple, more simple. Let's say that we're going to use a 30 shift. Now, the letter 30 along from A is actually, so the 26th shift from A is back to A. Then we've got 27, 28, 29, 30. So A would then be transposed into E. But that's exactly the same as a 1, 2, 3, 4 shift. It's exactly the same. So you can see with the Caesar cipher, with the standard alphabet, you can really only shift a certain amount of characters between the alphabets before you're repeating again. Okay, so in a standard, if we go back to the standard Caesar shift of 3 characters, we can define our transformation as such. So here's our normal alphabet in the top line, A through to Z, and then down here is our shifted alphabet. So it's been shifted along 3 characters. So you can see A, B, and C now appear at the back end here, and then everything else in order. We then, in order to do our encryption, because we can't encrypt letters, because mathematics is used to do the encryption. Algorithms are mathematical, so we have to convert our letters into numbers. So we then give each letter a number from, in this case, 0 through to 25. Now, in this case, we actually haven't shifted the letters through, but we could. We could simply shift the letters through, the numbers through the same as the letters. Doesn't matter. Simple example. So we've got numbers here for each of our letters. Now, the algorithm can be expressed as follows. So just keep with me. This is a little bit complex, but it's not too bad. So C is ciphertext. So the ciphertext equals the plain text shifted by 3. Okay, so the encryption algorithm is the plain text shifted by 3. So the ciphertext equals the plain text shifted by 3. So that equals P plus 3 mod 26. So this is a general formula for the Caesar cipher. So what that means is, what modular mathematics means is, you divide this number by 26, and whatever the remainder is what you get, is what you use. So if we say, for example, let's encrypt the letter K. Okay, so if we feed K into here, we've got C equals E3, 10, because 10 is a value for K, equals 10 plus 3 equals 13, mod 26. Okay, if you divide 13 by 26, what do you get? You can't do that. You say you can't divide 13 by 26, so the remainder is 13. So the final value stays as 13 in this particular case. Now, a shift may be of any amount. So the general Caesar algorithm is this here. Okay, so the key is however many characters we put in. So that could be, if we do a 10 shift, so shift along our letters by 10 characters, that would be a 10. And our ciphertext would be the value that lines up once that shift has been done. So where K, so our key, the number we're going to shift by, takes on a value in the range of 1 to 25, the decryption algorithm is simply the reverse of that. So the plain text becomes the key and the ciphertext. So the ciphertext minus the key. So we shift it back again, and we do the modular mathematics, and we come out with the remainder. So now, the modular mathematics may seem strange to use in this particular cipher, because it doesn't actually do anything. It's not actually doing anything in our example. As I said, if we encrypt K, value 10, we have 10 plus 3 equals 13, mod 26 equals 13, so it doesn't change anything. But it becomes more useful as we get into different encryption ciphers, or we use different alphabets. But in a real simple example, it's not going to provide us much benefit, but it's worthwhile under having a bit of a grasp of the actual formula itself.
Hey, Matt, just a
Yep.
question from Henry here. What if a sentence included numbers in a Caesar cipher? Would that sort of even be possible in a Caesar cipher?
No, because you could still, in the traditional form of a Caesar cipher, you would write the numbers as letters. Okay, if you're actually going to put letters in them, then they would unless you, I guess the answer to that is, unless you the recipient knew that you were going to put numbers in there, it would be confusing using a Caesar cipher.
Yeah.
If we go back to that example, and say if we use numbers as well, and then we align them up with a shifted number, that actually could be quite confusing using a normal Caesar cipher. But what you could do is use a separate alphabet. And when I say like an extended alphabet, so you could say I'll use the letters A to Z, and then after that follow the numbers 0 to 10. So then in effect what you have is a 37 character alphabet, and you could still shift characters along based on that, and your Caesar cipher is still going to work. It then means that this mod 26 is no longer relevant. That would need to be a mod 37. So this only works, this particular Caesar cipher with this formula will only work if you use the standard alphabet.
Well, yeah, or a common alphabet, whoever's using it. Yeah.
So whatever the length of your alphabet is, this modulus here, this mod number has to be equivalent.
Thanks a lot, Henry.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well done. Nice question. So if we look at the example we just went through and we brute force it, we can work out in a standard Caesar, because we only use 26 letters in the standard alphabet, we only have to attempt 25 different keys until we find the answer. Now, if we start at 1, also knowing that the plain text language is known. So we know that the plain text language is going to be English. We know that we only have 25 keys to attempt, and we know that we have a Caesar cipher. So it's going to be really, really easy to break. So we take our Caesar cipher, we run it using the key shift of 1, and we get some gibberish. We still can't read that, doesn't make any sense. We try a key shift of 2, still doesn't make any sense. Try a key shift of 3, it says meet me after the toga party. Oh, makes sense. We found that plain text. Now, so it's only a matter of time, a very small amount of time before you can brute force a Caesar cipher. And that's simply because it uses a very small key. And that's what it basically comes down to. The bigger the key, the more secret the key, the better off you're going to be. And even with, you know, the more complex algorithms which we look at the end of this evening, if you've got a really big key, then you're going to be safe, even if they do know what the encryption algorithm is and the language that you're encrypting is. So brute forcing Caesar is relatively easy. If we have a look at a monoalphabetic cipher, what they do is, rather than a constant shift of the alphabet, they will shuffle the letters arbitrarily. And the key can be any permutation, if you like, of the 26 alphabetic characters. So that means we've got 4 times 10 to the 26 possible keys. So there's a lot more keys we can look at, a heck of a lot more. So if we looked at a really simple example here, we've got our plain text alphabet of A through to Z. We've got a cipher text alphabet, which is still using the standard alphabet, but they're in a different order. So in this case, I've just started with the leftmost letter key, and I've gone across the top row, then I've gone to the second row on my keyboard, third row on my keyboard. So it's a really simple way of coming up. It's using the same alphabet, but it's in a different order. And then we can do the same thing where we just simply align, we encipher our plain text here, which says cryptography is confidential. We simply encipher our plain text letter with the equivalent key in the cipher here. So C becomes E, R becomes S, Y becomes N, so on and so forth. Now, this is more difficult to break, obviously, because the cryptanalyst wouldn't know what the order of the characters are that we've used for our alphabet. And you could literally just randomly, well, within the realms of human randomness, you could randomly type all the different keys on your keyboard until you came up with an alphabet. And that's really where the extra level of complexity comes from, is the fact that yes, the alphabet's the same, but it's in a very different order. And that's a really powerful tool. So you can see that it generates a lot more keys and therefore significantly increases the likelihood of the encryption algorithm being broken. They are, however, simple to break, or less simple than Caesar, but still more simple than things like AES and triple DES, because they don't hide the data of the original alphabet, and they don't hide the characteristics of the English language. So still, single letter, the most common letter in the English language is E. Diagram, so 2 letters together, the most common 2-letter combination is TH. And trigram, so 3 letters together, the most common 3-letter combination is THE or V. So because we know that, because these monoalphabetic ciphers use just the standard 26 letters, they don't hide the characteristics of the English language. And so because of that, with a little bit of practice, they can be quite simple to break. The Playfair cipher is the best known of the multi-letter ciphers, and it treats diagrams in the plain text as a single unit. So in other words, it enciphers 2 letters at a time rather than 1 letter at a time. And how they do that is it uses a 5 by 5 matrix of letters, and we construct that with the addition of a keyword. This particular cipher was used by the British Army in World War I and the Allied forces in World War II for quite some time. So the way it looks is like this. We fill in the letters of a keyword minus the duplicates from left to right and top to bottom in a 5 by 5 grid. Then we fill the remainder of the matrix with the remaining letters in the alphabet in alphabetic order. So, for example, if we use the keyword IT Masters, in the Playfair square, we write ITMASER. We don't write in the duplicate, the second T, and we don't write in the second S. So that then becomes our keyword. We then write in all the other letters of the alphabet that haven't been used in the keyword in alphabetic order. So we're left with B, C, D, F, G, H, K, L, N, O, P, Q, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And that is our Playfair square that we use, or Playfair grid that we use to encrypt our text. Then, to encrypt the text, we encrypt 2 letters at a time. If we have repeating letters, so 2 letters of the same in the plain text, we separate by a filler character, which is X. We use X as our filler character. So in the example here, we've got the word balloon. It would be broken into lots of 2 characters by Playfair. So we end up with BA space LX, because we don't have 2 L's together, because we don't want the same 2 letters together. So that becomes LX for encipherment. We add the filler in, we have LO, and we have ON. So that would be the first step in the Playfair cipher. Break the plain text into 2 letters and add in the fillers as need be. Then, letters in the same row. So if we look at the letters, if they're in the same row of the Playfair grid, we replace them by the letter to the immediate right. So in other words, the letters IT become TM. So let me explain that. So the letters IT are in the same row. So we replace each letter by the letter that's immediately to the right. So I becomes T, T becomes M. Therefore, IT becomes TM. If the letters are in the same column, they're replaced by the letter immediately above them. So if, for example, we had the combination AK in our plain text, so AK, they are in the same column, we then replace them with the letter immediately below. So A becomes C and K becomes Q. Therefore, AK becomes CQ. Otherwise, if they're in different rows and columns, then each letter is replaced by the one in its row and the column of the other letter. So if we look at P, P is here, and our other letter is Y. So we replace P by the intersection of the column and row for the 2 plain text letters, in this case P and Y. So the intersection is at Q, so P becomes Q and Y becomes X, because that intersects there as well. And if we take our previous message of cryptography is confidential and encrypt it using these words, we end up with this particular ciphertext down the bottom here. And I would urge you to, after this evening, take a little bit of time to work through that plain text and ciphertext example I've got down the bottom and see if I've made a mistake. I don't think I have, but I'd be really fascinated to have you guys look at it and tell me whether I've messed something up.
That's bonkers, man. That is so good. Who
yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, Playfair was a person, or
sorry, if I missed that. Playfair was a person, so he was basically the person that came up with the idea of this particular cipher.
In British?
So typically the ciphers are named after whoever came up with them.
Wow.
All right, so now the security of the Playfair cipher then is, as you can see, better than monoalphabetic, because it has 26 by 26. We've got 26 possible letters. 26 by 26 gives us 676 possible diagrams, because remember we encipher based by every 2 letters. So if we've got 26 letters in position 1, 26 letters in position 2, that gives us 676 possible letter combinations that we could encipher or use as we could use to encipher. So this then means that we need a 676 entry frequency table, so to look at the frequency analysis of the letters to analyze and break it, versus only using 26 in the monoalphabetic. Because we only have to worry about each letter, each single letter in monoalphabetic. In this case, we've got, because we use diagrams, which is an extra clever bit about it, not only are we using a keyword with a shifted alphabet, but we're using diagrams, which is really, really intelligent. However, it can be broken if we have an understanding of a few hundred of those diagrams, and we can start to build an idea. So we've still got to have some information, and it still doesn't completely hide the structure of the plain text, but it's a heck of a lot better than the previous ciphers that we've looked at thus far. The other thing I'll get you to notice, hopefully, is that, and maybe someone might have asked the question, I actually haven't looked at the questions, but some of you may notice that 5 by 5 square, which means 26 letter alphabet, there's got to be a letter missing, doesn't there? The letter is I and J. I and J are used interchangeably. You can use one or the other. So that's where that letter goes missing. So that can be an added little bit of a thing that catch you out on the end of it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Tom and Kushal and Hani. Yeah.
Okay,
wonderful.
so a couple of notes. Good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Good stuff.
And that, no doubt they saw Indiana Jones and
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Jehovah starts with an I. All right. So more complex again, polyalphabetic ciphers. This improves on our simple monoalphabetic by using different monoalpha substitutions as encryption as we proceed through the plain text. Now, all of these ciphers have the following common features. They have a set of related monoalphabetic substitution rules, and they have a key that determines which rule is used for a given transformation. So this will become clear when we look at this example. So this is a Vignere cipher named after a Frenchman who came up with the cipher. This is the best known of the polyalphabetic substitution ciphers and consists of, and this is tricky, he's going to use someone else's work for a start, it consists of 26 Caesar ciphers with shifts of 0 through to 25. Each cipher, so each of these Caesar ciphers, is denoted by a key letter, which is the ciphertext letter substituted for the plain text letter A. To encrypt, a key is needed that is at least as long as the message. It is usually a repeating word. Now there's a formula for it there, so it's not really that much different from the Caesar cipher, but what you will notice is there's a little bit more modular mathematics in there. Let's work through an example, probably make it a lot clearer. So if we look at this example here, we've got our plain text alphabet and we've got our numbers underneath. Our keyword I've chosen is IT Masters once again. Now I just said that the keyword had to be as long as the plain text. So what we do is in the key is we repeat the letters of the keyword, IT Masters, IT Masters, IT Master, until we get to the end of the plain text. In this case, the message cryptography is confidential. Okay, we use that key. Then what we do is we look at our ciphertext key up here and we say where we have a C in the ciphertext, we are going to, hang on a minute, what have I done here? Yes, sorry, yeah, I got it, yeah. So where we, that's, no, I was right, I lost my train of thought there. Where we have an I, a C in the ciphertext, we are going to use the key I. So the key I equates to 8, okay, the number 8. So we move, using the Caesar cipher, we shift our C along 8 positions. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and C becomes K. Okay, so that's the first letter because our key is I. The second letter of our plain text, our key for that letter becomes T. So we look at our T, and the T, the letter with the number associated with T is 19. So we shift our plain text along 19 letters. Okay, so we go to R, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, wrap back around, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And what do you know? We come up with K again. Similarly, we look at our next plain text. It's a Y. We have to use the key M. M is represented by the number 12. So we have to shift our plain text along 12 positions. So we go to Y, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we're back at K again. So that's why the first 3 letters of our ciphertext are all K. So that then becomes really confusing, because from a cryptanalysis point of view, you look at that, although there's a couple of different ways to look at it. You look at that and you'd say, there's three of the same letter in a row. How often does that occur in the English language within a single word? I don't know, but I don't think it would happen very often, if at all. So then you've got to take the approach, all right, is it a single word, so a single letter word followed by 2 letters, which are starting the next word? Now, what is the structure of the English language there? We can't see it quite as much. It's a little bit hidden from us because of the fact that we're using this rotating key. So it's really, really clever. Although it uses a Caesar shift, so we're just shifting our letters and the numerical value of our letters along to whatever the key states, because we're using a different key or a rotating key for each letter, it's really clever in the way we use a different Caesar shift for each of our letters, and so it results in a much more complex ciphertext. So really, really clever. Right, so that's the substitution ciphers. Okay, so again, take some time to go through that and get a real good grip of what's going on there. So basically, we just use our key, we refer to the key, it's 8 characters, we shift our plain text along by that many characters, and we end up at K, and we do that for each letter in our plain text as we go along. And that's why our key has to be the same length as our plain text. If it's not, then we run out of shifts to do for each of our ciphertext, our plain text letters. Pretty cool. All right, I'm running behind. What a surprise! Transposition ciphers.
Yeah, but it's amazing. It's really interesting. Getting a lot of love in the chat. So, you know, you do
well,
you. It's fine.
I hope it, because it is interesting stuff. But I'll try and get through these ones relatively quickly.
Sorry to interrupt that flow, but
no problem.
it's just mind blowing that people can come up with this stuff, first of all, and second, the person that came up with the Playfair Cipher, I was just doing some Wikipedia, also invented the concertina, the squeeze box thing. So,
well, there you go.
Just heavens above, like poly maths everywhere. Anyway, sorry everyone, continue, Matt.
Well, there you go. That's interesting. Thanks for that. All right. Okay. So transposition ciphers. In these ciphers, so as opposed to substitution ciphers, these guys perform some permutation on the plain text letters. There is no substitution of letters though. So the letter frequency remains completely unchanged in this. So it doesn't try to substitute the letters, turn them into something else. It just combines them in a different way. And a couple of examples of that include the rail fence cipher, which we're going to have a look at, and the row transposition cipher. So the rail fence cipher, this is the simplest of the transposition ciphers. And what we do with this, and this is kind of cool too, is we write down the plain text as a sequence of diagonals. Okay, so like this. We have the same message: cryptography is confidential. Hard to read, but that's what it says. And then, so once we've written them down as a sequence of diagonals, and incidentally, the depth of the diagonal, or how many rows we go down, is the key. So in this case, we have a depth or a key of 3. So we use 1, 2, 3 diagonal rows to write our text, and then we start up again, and then we go down again, and up again, and down again, and up again, and down, until we get to the end of our plain text. Then once we've done that, we read off the ciphertext just by simply reading across the rows. So cryptography is confidential becomes CTAINEA so on and so forth. And you're left with this ciphertext here. So the thing about this, so this is a bit like, it's sort of similar to what they do on 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, if anyone who watches that on SBS or on British television.
Vale or Sean Mark?
Yeah, that's exactly, yes, absolutely.
Is it Vale or Vale? I don't know.
Vale.
Thanks.
But either way. So we then, so what it does is it simply twists or scrambles the order of the letters. It doesn't change anything. So we've still got the same letters here as what we had up here. We've just got them in a separate order. Now, on 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, they arrange them into funny words if they can. In this case, we can't, but it's basically, you know, anagramming our plain text into our ciphertext. So again, an interesting way of doing it. This is pretty simple to crack because, as I said, the frequency of the letters are still the same. So it's not, you know, not the most complex thing to look at, but it's a different way of doing it. So instead of substituting letters, we're simply transposing the order. So cool, pretty clever. All right. Now quickly, if we look at block and stream ciphers. So now there's the example, just going back to these guys for a minute, the substitution and transposition ciphers and the Caesar cipher form the basis for most of the activities that you're going to be doing this week in terms of decryption, mainly decryption. So I've mainly set you cryptanalysis type exercises. So giving you a quote from a movie or a quote from a famous person, I'm getting you to decrypt them based on what you know about these ciphers that we spoke about this evening. And they're all pretty simple. Take a little bit of time maybe. I mean, you can always cheat and go online and find a tool that'll do it for you, but where's the fun in that? So have a go at just trying to work them out yourself, and then use the tools as a backup, and hopefully you'll really get a really good understanding of how it all works. The other thing to keep in mind is we're using really simple mathematics and really simple keys in these examples. So in the real examples, in real encryption algorithms, the numbers that we use are much, 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 much larger, and therefore the mathematics to try and break them is much more complex, but it gives you the idea. All right, if we look at block and stream ciphers, a couple of examples, data encryption standard and advanced encryption standard is what we're going to look at. So stream ciphers basically are exactly what they sound like. They encrypt the digital stream 1 bit or a byte at a time. Okay, so it feeds the ones and zeros. So we still convert our letters into binary and we feed them one by one into the cipher as a stream. And the ideal case is where the key stream, so the stream of ones and zeros that make up the key, is the same length as the plain text stream. Okay, so same as in the example, the roll fence of the Vignere cipher that we just looked at. If the key stream is random, so it's just literally random or even pseudo-random numbers, then the cipher pretty much becomes unbreakable without having knowledge of what that key stream is. So stream ciphers are really, really strong. The key stream must be shared prior to encryption by some other secure method. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Symmetric encryption ciphers have a single key. It's got to be shared some way. And it's really important that we maintain the secrecy of that key in that sharing, because if we don't, then we have knowledge of the key stream. Doesn't matter what sort of cipher we use, it's going to be able to be broken. Now, for logistical reasons, in other words, resource reasons, time reasons, the bit stream generator, so the generator that converts things into bits and streams them through the cipher, has to be implemented in an algorithm, okay? So we're not going to do it by hand, for example, or do it in a non-algorithmic way. Keys for it is, keys, you've got to be careful with saying key. The important points for it are that it must be computationally infeasible to be able to predict future portions of the bit stream based on previous portions. So in other words, you can't have some of the ciphertext and be able to predict, or some of the key stream and be able to predict what our future part of the key stream is going to be. So it's got to be random enough that you can't guess what it could be. So it's not predictable. Users only have to share only share the generating key to produce the key stream. So we only need to have that shared secret key in order to be able to reproduce the key stream. So the ones and zeros that we're feeding into the cipher along with the plain text to produce the ciphertext. If we know that key, we're all good to go. Block ciphers, on the other hand, use a block of plain text and they treat it as a whole to produce an equal length block of ciphertext. How big that block is going to be dependent on the algorithm in use. So a typical block size might be 64 or 128 bits used in DES, or 192 bits in triple DES, or for example, 256-bit blocks in the example of AES. Now, as with the stream cipher, the two end users, the communicating parties, have to share a symmetric encryption key, which again is converted into blocks and fed into the cipher at the same time. The majority of the network-based symmetric cryptographic applications make use of block ciphers. So most of the time, if you're implementing a VPN on a router, for example, or a firewall, or you're doing some sort of data communications encryption configuration on some device, you're going to be using symmetric-based encryption rather than asymmetric the vast majority of the time. If we look at the difference between stream and block ciphers in this pictogram, we can see that we have a key that we put into, with the bit stream, we have a key, and we put that into the bit stream generation algorithm. It spits out a whole heap of ones and zeros, which then go through the encryption process with the ones and zeros from the plain text, doing the different substitutions, transpositions, permutations, combinations of whatever's defined by the algorithm, which then results in our ciphertext. At the other end, all we simply do is we feed the same key into the same bitstream generation algorithm. We send the ciphertext in, it does the reverse decryption, and it comes out with the plain text. So it's exactly the same as a simplified diagram we looked before, just showing the placement of the bitstream generation algorithm. If we use block streaming algorithms, then we take a key, we pass it through the encryption algorithm with a block of plain text. Now, how big that block is will be determined by the algorithm. So as I said, if it's DES, for example, we will use 64 bits of plain text, feed it into the encryption algorithm with a key, and we will come out with ciphertext also will be 64 bits in size. So however big the block of plain text is that goes into the encryption algorithm, it will spit out a block of ciphertext exactly the same size. We then send that across to our partner, who will then take the ciphertext of block B, send it through the decryption algorithm with the key, and come out with the same plain text as we sent them. So in theory, it's all very, very simple. We take a key, plain text, pass it through an algorithm, ciphertext out the other side, send it to our recipient. They put it through the same algorithm, the same key, and they generate a plain text. It's exactly the same. It's just in this case, we're using a stream of bits, and in this, we're using a group of bits known as a block. But the actual process theory behind it is exactly the same. Our data encryption standard is a block cipher that was issued in 1977 by the National Bureau of Standards, which is now NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it was called the Federal Information Processing Standard 46. If you want to read something to go to sleep, go for your life. That's definitely something I would recommend. It was the most widely used encryption standard until AES came along in 2001. AES far superior. Now, DES actually exists in a couple of forms. So there's DES, which used an algorithm called the data encryption algorithm, and it used a 64-bit block, so block of plain text. Each block of plain text was 64 bits long, and it used a 56-bit key. Unfortunately, that was broken. And so they came up with this idea of triple DES, where they would still use a 64-bit block, but they would use a 192-bit key, which is really just 3 times 56. No, that's not right. 3 times 56 is 100. Oh, I got my maths wrong. 100. Work it. 3 times 56. 178. There we go. Oh, wow, that was too difficult for me. So it shows how good I am at maths. Anyway, the algorithm will then transform that 64-bit input block, plaintext block, into a series of steps, through a series of steps using the 56-bit key, and it spits out that 64-bit output, as we said in the previous diagram. Same steps and key are used to reverse encryption. So DES is just a simple block cipher that uses a 56-bit key and a 64-bit block of text in its standard form, original form. Now, there we go, 168. Oh, if I'd gone to the next slide, it would have told me without being so silly. Okay, the average time to break, this is really interesting. The average time to break these particular ciphers. So if we have DES cipher using a 56-bit key, there is 2 to the 56, or approximately 7.2 times 10 to the 16 possible keys. The time required to decrypt is 1.125 years. So that is at 10 to the power of 9 decryptions per second. So that's pretty fast. It would take 1.125 years. If we increased our speed of calculation to 10 to the 13, so that's 10 with 13 zeros after it, decryptions per second, it'll only take an hour to decrypt. Now we can see the difference a larger key makes. So if we simply a bit more than double the key as AES, so AES 128 is the lowest level of AES, so the smallest bit size for the key, we can see that it now takes 5.3 times 10 to the 17 years. So 5.3, that's a lot of years anyway, 530 trillion years or something it is. Something ridiculous like that. Don't quote me on that maths. As I said, I'm not that great at this sort of maths. If we look at 168-bit key triple DES, that's going to take 5.8 times 10 to the 29 years to decrypt, and so on and so forth. So you can see the key size is absolutely critical. The bigger the key, the longer it's going to take for someone to crack. Now, if an attacker, we now know that AES 256-bit is really commonly used, but even if we use AES 128-bit, you can still say it's going to take so much time to decrypt. Okay, now, when we get to next week, we're actually going to have a little bit of a discussion on quantum computing and how theoretically, how quick that can actually break these algorithms, or actually how quick it could potentially break the RSA algorithm, RSA 2048, which uses a 2048-bit key. And it comes down to if you've got perfect conditions with certain configuration of your quantum computer, can take about 10 seconds, other than half the 550 trillion years or whatever it is. So you can tell. So what that's really telling us is key size and secrecy of the key is paramount, but also the processing speed and the resources at which we can break. At the moment, AES 256 at the moment is unbreakable, absolutely unbreakable. And even if we use monoalphabetic, using a 26-character permutation, still takes quite a long time to break, but significantly lower than any of these guys here. Which is interesting that it's actually faster than DES. What's that say about DES? All right, I digress. So the strengths of DES, where are the strengths? The strengths are that things like timing attacks, so an attack in which information about the key or the plain text is obtained by observing how long it takes the given implementation of DES to perform decryptions on various ciphertexts. So what it is it looks at how long it takes to decrypt, and then on that comes up with okay, well, it's this type of DES or that type of DES. So it's understanding that how long something takes to actually perform the mathematical calculations gives us an idea of what sort of algorithm it is, and therefore points us in the right direction, more or less. These sort of attacks exploit the fact that an encryption or decryption algorithm often takes slightly different amounts of time on different inputs. So it based on different plain text and the same key, different plain text will be encrypted or decrypted in a different time. But as you can tell, we still don't have a lot of information about the encryption overall, even from understanding how the timing works. So it's very, very unlikely that this particular technique will ever be successful. And if we look at something like a brute force attack, good luck, particularly with anything above 56-bit DES. And even in some cases, that's okay for today, for the modern world. And the reason I say that is because it takes an hour. If the information you're processing is only vitally important, critically important for 10 seconds, and it takes them an hour to break it, who cares? All right, advanced encryption standard. Now, this is a really noisy, busy diagram. In a nutshell, AES takes plain text of, in this case, 128 bits, converts them into a certain format, goes through a number of different rounds of transformations and encoding, which include the key and some shifting and a whole heap of other stuff, mathematical stuff, which we're going to have a very brief look at in shortly. Point is, it's a lot more complex and sophisticated than DES. Not only that, it uses a much bigger bit size. So those two things put together means it's a pretty nasty thing to try and crack. This is what it basically does. So it takes our plain text of 16 bytes, which is 16 times 8, so 128 bits. We use a couple of different keys, a round key and expand key. In the first round, so in other words, round number 1, it does some substitution of bytes, it does some shifting of rows, it mixing some columns, and then it adds another round key, and it does this again and again and again and again and again through a number of different rounds, in this case 10. So all the while substituting bytes, shifting rows, mixing columns, adding in another key value, going back through the next round, substituting bytes, shifting rows, shifting columns, mixing columns, adding the round key, until it gets to the last round where it doesn't do any mixing columns. It just adds a round key, then spits out the ciphertext. Wow, okay. So even, without going into the maths of it, and if you really want to go into the maths of it, there's some resources that will have popped up now on Moodle. You can look at, and if you're really, really interested, you can, if you're interested in having a go at the CSU subject or one of the IT Masters subjects, we go into the maths a heck of a lot more. But even without going into the maths, you can see it's much more complex, much more involved. It takes longer to encipher and longer to decipher, a lot more sophisticated than anything that DES had to offer. And in order to be able to try and break that, takes significant time, as we saw in the table just previously.
Will not need to understand the maths to pass the exam of this
absolutely
course.
not. No, absolutely not.
although.
Oh, well, no, you don't need to know the maths to that level, absolutely not. Because if there was, I wouldn't be able to grade the exam anyway. So the detailed structure. So just quickly, we'll get through these last couple of slides. It processes the entire block, so all 128 bits. It converts it into a matrix, as we saw in this slide here. So it's a 4x4 matrix. And during each round, it uses substitutions and permutations, which it performs on that entire block in that matrix form. The key is provided as an input and expanded into an array of 44 32-bit words. So 44, it's a lot of work happening there with the key. And it then does the substitution of bytes, which is a byte-by-byte substitution of each individual block. It does a simple permutation in the shift rows. It does an arithmetic substitution when it mixes the columns. And then it does a simple bitwise exclusive OR of the current block with a portion of this expanded key. Okay, and it does that each round, and it does up to 10 rounds. Crazy. Okay, so very, very complex, very, very sophisticated. Each stage is easily reversible, obviously, if you use the correct algorithm and you've got the correct key. If you're trying to do it by hand or doing it on your laptop, you're never going to do it. You're just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. The decryption algorithm makes use of the expanded key in reverse order, so it just feeds it in the reverse order in which it was done when we encrypted. The decryption algorithm is not identical to the encryption algorithm, so the decryption is not exactly the same as encryption, goes in reverse, but the state is the same for both encryption and decryption. Okay, so the phases it goes through is exactly the same. The final round of both encryption and decryption consists of only three stages, because we don't do that, the mixed columns in the last round. And that happens in both decryption or encryption. Whew, okay. That is AES and DES. Yeah, so DES and AES, we're just scratching the surface.
Wow.
You could literally do a whole series of webinars, a whole course, a whole massive online course on both of those algorithms separately. So we really are only, scratching the surface.
Hey, just let us know in the chat if you would like that, because I was shouting last week about how good, a masterclass on top of what we've already done would be. Just let us know in the course survey at the end. We've got a planning meeting coming up for the short courses soon anyway for the next year. Let's just lock Matt in and say, oi, get studying, Matty boy. Let's do some maths.
Yeah, because it is incredibly interesting. And actually next week, I think asymmetric encryption is even more interesting. And we're actually going to do some RSA encryption by hand in the tutorial next week.
Yeah,
and only using really small numbers, but it is fascinating, and it's something that you can really get your teeth into.
Yeah, well, if you're keen on another short course in the next year, Matt, you can design it yourself, whatever you're keen on.
Well, I think the RSA side of it is fascinating. But anyway, we digress. That's for next week. So learning tasks for this week, there's lots of different things for you to do on the Moodle site. So all of those activities will become live now. There's a number of encryption activities or cryptanalysis type activities to look at. I think there's 3 different activities, but each one has multiple parts to it. So please have a go at those and share your answers on the discussion forums and ask me questions. It's a really interesting thing to go through. And while we're keeping it simple, it's a great way to get a really good understanding of how these older algorithms work. And sure, you might not see a Caesar cipher or a Vignere cipher or a Playfair cipher or a rail fence cipher in use today, in real use to protect really secret stuff. But it's a really interesting thing to see the history of it, where it's come from, and how these modern ciphers have developed. And really, even AES is just, combining a whole heap of theories from substitution, transposition, permutation, shifting things around, substituting things in. It's all the same. It's just putting a whole heap of those other older ciphers together in a different order to come up with something really complex. So if you understand the basics of it, you can really start to get a really good understanding and appreciation for the higher level stuff as well. So well worth having a look at those activities. So I guess, Guy, it's over to you for the next few minutes until we get to our question time.
I'd like to follow, mate. There's some good chat going on, good jokes, but also Davo chucked in a link to YouTube about Eddie Wu teaching this sort of thing very well. Love Eddie Wu so much, so there's a YouTube link in there.
Actually, yeah, Eddie Wu, actually, the example I do next week is very similar to one of his video on RSA. He doesn't call it RSA encryption. I think he just calls it asymmetric encryption in his 2-part video, but yeah, very similar.
Yeah, go and have a look, get some preparation in. Bloody hell, mate, that was really interesting. Hannah's given me a very limited amount of time, so you're all very lucky. Matt, if you can relinquish the screen for a sec, actually, I should be able to do it for you.
Go for it.
And I will try. Oh, I've got to hang on. Well, now that we've got rid of that, now I will start the PowerPoint and do the screen thingy. God, I much prefer emceeing to actually doing presentations, Matt. Here we go, slideshow, and I haven't got my script, so I'm just going to wing it. So as promised, here we are talking about why one should study with IT Masters. And I suppose I like to think that all of these sorts of presentations should start with, I guess, a justification for study, full stop, let alone studying with us. So I'm not saying that you can't get jobs, you can't transition careers, you can't progress to the next step in your IT careers if you're already embedded within the IT industry, but education sure helps. Basically just as a tool to open the door, like from an instrumental perspective, it's very valuable. Hopefully, like these free short courses demonstrate that the intrinsic value of learning this stuff is like, it's its own reward. But if you want to, I guess, put food on the table, I guess the instrumental function is more important to talk about. So if you're already in the gig, you can build particular skills, you can complement existing skills, you can sort of target specific subjects, and there's always a solution for you, whilst you sort of get the piece of paper that can get you through the door, because let's face it, IT wasn't always something that you needed a degree for. But I like most of the decent level jobs, or the sort of not the entry level jobs, now require some bachelor's or college degree, or, even postgrad, as you can see in this ad for a cybersecurity SOC analyst in Melbourne. I want to say that it's not a replacement for certification. One of the things that I most frequently hear is like, should I do certifications or should I do a master's or whatever, or a graduate certificate? And really it's like, it's a false dichotomy. Often you will learn about like concepts and theories in a postgrad, but you'll also, there's heaps of subjects that have preparation for certifications, and you can, it really depends on your learning style and what you're keen on and who's willing to pay for what once you're in a job. It's not something that like you need to make a choice about, and it really depends on what you want. You can spend a lot of time doing your university study, or you can spend a lot of money on the preparatory courses that are tied to the certifications, and often you don't really need to do the courses if you've done a university subject as part of the preparation for the certificate. So a lot of people say, hey, what should I get? I say, hey, why not both? We don't actually have any subjects that are tied straight to a certification. You'll still need to go and do exams. So just make sure you are aware of that if you are keen. Oh, first of all, well, not first of all, after much waffle, who has had a look at the ADF CyberGap program application? Let us know in the chat. If you are keen on study, you would be, and thinking of sort of starting in the next year, you would absolutely have nothing to lose in applying for that CyberGap thing that we were talking about last week, which there's links up to in the course page. Try and get a free education. Why not extend the free education from these short courses to some postgrad awards? With the bachelor or graduate certificate, I think, again, it sort of depends on what you can sacrifice. If you already have started a career, or you want to transition, like, and are embedded in the IT industry, or you want to transition to an IT career because you're in, a job that you no longer enjoy, or a career that you no longer enjoy, or you just, are so aware of the fact that IT is the future, perhaps a bachelor degree might take too long, and it would be more sensible to start with maybe something a bit more advanced, where you might have to sort of accelerate your learning, but at least you don't have to sacrifice so much time. And I think that's a really important consideration. And of course, there's a return on investment, like, well, not of course, but evidence suggests that there is a return on investment. If you have a postgraduate award, the data suggests that you will earn a higher income. So in terms of like instrumental value, fantastic. Of course, that needs to be corrected for, the sort of person that wants to do a master's. They might be more ambitious, they might apply for different jobs, but there is a relationship there. And I'm sorry, Hannah, if I'm running over time. And I'm also sorry, I forgot Oh, there we go. We've got the slides. So hopefully, you know, it's a slam dunk to study postgrad IT. Awesome idea. We think we're pretty good at it, and the numbers suggest we are, as that link when you get those slides later will suggest. We like to think, particularly in cybersecurity, that we have a very sharp and focused and well-selected group of subjects. As you can see from the image on the right, we sort of make a distinction between, I guess, theoretical academic subjects, and they're the ones that CSU or Charles Sturt University teach. And then we go for sort of like the applications of the theory in enterprise settings, making sure that like you can apply the theory and also in general, and also understand how it is applied at the current moment, you know, for better or worse. You can always, I guess, investigate whether or not it's a good idea that it is done that way. But if you're looking for jobs and for sort of that instrumental idea, get into it. Are you there, Matt? No? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Guy, I had myself on mute, sorry.
I was just wondering if you wanted to add anything. You can always jump in anytime I interrupt you so frequently. So one of the best things, I guess, about studying with IT Masters is we like to think that we have a decent understanding of what's going on in the industry. And therefore we can, I guess, use that knowledge to tailor a suitable plan to the student that's about to start. And I like, it's so amazing to me how diverse like the goals and the dreams of the students that are coming in actually is, but also at the same time how consistently we hear the same issues about like what's the problem. Like it'll be time, it'll be money, it'll be essentially I'm not sure that I can do it. And if we get a really good understanding of where you're at, where your experience is, what you want out of the course, and what sort of time frame you have to sort of get started and sort of get going on to the next step of your journey, whatever it is, then we can tailor a really specific plan, make sure you start with the right subject, pegged at the right level. So like there's a huge difference between doing cybersecurity fundamentals with math as your first subject versus doing, I don't know, for example, IT E514, system security. Like one is at the very sort of lower end of maybe a CISP certification, and one is right at the top end, like the overarching cybersecurity, I guess, program from a risk management perspective, from a management perspective. It depends where you see yourself. It depends on what you see your skill set as, because that's really crucially important. And given this is a cybersecurity short course, it's really important to, I think, note that cybersecurity is a hugely, you know, it's an umbrella title for, you know, all sorts of people. Like you can be people focused, you can be tech focused, it doesn't matter. So the key is just to make sure that we do the work together to understand the goals. And then when the goalposts shift, and once you get in there and you sort of maybe change your ideas about what you want to do, we can do that together as well. Like that's, I think, the major advantage of studying with IT Masters. And also we've got like cool details stuff. Like I know a lot of people want to focus on the details, but I really do think that the emotional journey is probably the biggest barrier. And the rest is just like proxy. If you don't have any previous education history, or you don't have any employment history, we can find ways to get you into a grad cert to start. And, you know, apologies for the 2020 intakes graphic here, but we can find ways to fit you in at the session you want to start with. We can find credits if you want to expedite it, because, you know, there's so many avenues to that credit. It's recognition of prior learning based on experience now, certifications, and these short courses. It's very flexible, and in COVID times, all tertiary education institutions are desperate for students, it must be said. So just go for it if you want to, and if you don't like it, you can withdraw. Same applies for the ADF CyberGap program. Like if you don't get it and you only want to do it if you get free education, go for it. And if you don't get it, just say, no, I'll try next time.
Yeah, you've got absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you come in and you actually realize that Matt is a huge tyrant in ITI 581 cybersecurity fundamentals and a very hard marker, and doesn't even support you, in the unlikely event that happens,
Wow.
you can withdraw before the census date, right? Like, you have, I don't know, like I think it's about a month to decide whether the subject is for you. And if you don't like the subject, maybe you can try another subject the next time around. It's about, again, like identifying the objectives, working towards the goal, and keeping us in the loop so that we can suggest things and maybe demystify the process and make sure that we're all working towards the same goal. I think that might even be the second last slide. And yes, you'll get a bunch of info about all of the stuff I waffle about all the time, and you'd think would write a script for, but haven't. So I might stop my share, Matt.
Nicely done, guy.
And let's have a look at your Q&As. There's heavens above. If there's any Q&A, I'll just focus. Does anyone have any questions about study specifically? The cutoff for the ADF is, I know this because Hannah told me earlier today. Oh goodness, we waffle in the chat. 31st of October, yes, go for it by then. You can apply for whichever course and subjects you're interested in, and then you can figure it out. Thank you, Lizette, who chucked it in the chat. And yes, there is an age limit of 55. Perhaps I did all the banners for the Olympics. I wish I understood that. Yes, it was delayed. Anyway, if there's no questions about that, thank goodness you can all talk to the people that actually still do the work. I'm just here for the part-time of my life, a short course MC. And if you have any questions, you can contact the gang. So, Matt, first of all, do you have anything to add to that? And then second, let's get into these questions.
No, I don't think so. I think you've explained it beautifully, and sold the idea of our programs and the subjects quite well. As I said before, I don't think there's anything really to lose. You can come and try, and if it doesn't work out, you can, you have a month to basically decide whether you want to keep going or not. And I mean, it's all really in your favour to give it a go and try something new. So I'd absolutely encourage you to do it.
Really, and Matt, you studied with us, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, one of the universities I study at, yes.
One of the many. Who are you doing a PhD with, by the way?
That's La Trobe.
Yeah, sick. And not at all IT. Is it? Would you call it at all IT focused?
No, no, definitely not. It's biomechanical aspects of cricket bowling. So yeah. I wouldn't say that was IT related at all.